All right, let's take you through the big updates that are coming in. How and why Kamala Harris is possibly leading and winning in some of the prominent big cities, the international cities as they are called specifically, which has the diversity, immigrant population, but the political, social hubs. That's where it gets interesting. For now, while leads are showing that Trump is ahead with 198 electoral votes, but Kamala Harris is sweeping Washington, Colorado, and right now, even though lagging behind with the electoral votes at about 112. This, remember, signifies also the kind of narratives where they are working and how. The traditional red states in the South appear to be going for Donald Trump, but for Kamala Harris, New York, New Jersey, Washington, signifying perhaps of where the difference of opinion is reflecting in the early results that are coming. So will it be Donald Trump putting aside the legal hassles and possibly returning to the White House? Or will it be this time a woman president entering into the political corridors of the White House? This is, remember, at a time when Donald Trump, from the early results that are coming in, with a lot of excitement, confidence, celebration already happening in some areas, but there's caution. Donald Trump is ahead on 198 electoral votes. Kamala Harris about 112. They need a magic figure of 270. But which are the states where either of these candidates and their parties are winning? Donald Trump winning Texas, Ohio, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South, Wyoming as well. These have been traditionally, most of them have been the red states, so to say, or have been supportive of the Republican conservative politics. For the Democrat, Kamala Harris, it's again the ones that they were possibly expecting. New Jersey, New York, we're also hearing of Washington right now, Rhode Island, Connecticut and more, where the blue is becoming heavier as the color. But it's the 7 swing states that's going to be the focus. These states, remember, are where they have shown unpredictable results. Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Wisconsin. And this is constantly, as we are tracking, there are changes, updates, and a very close call. For example, 49% each going to each of these candidates. 47th President of the United States of America, who will decide how the relationship with other nations in a warlike scenario from West Asia and then Russia, Ukraine, India's growing relationship, economy, immigration, and more will be on agenda.
Our Republicans, we're doing really well. If you're in line, stay in line. Don't let them take you off that line. Vote. Stay on the line. They can't do anything about it. And vote. We're going to win it big. Thank you. Republicans, we're doing really well. Stay on line. Don't get off line and vote. Make sure you get through and vote. We're going to have a big victory tonight. Well, it'll be just that. We want to bring everybody in. We want to be very inclusive, and we will be very inclusive. We have a great country, but we have a country that's in trouble. It's in big trouble in many ways, and we have to straighten it out. We have crime is through the roof. We have people pouring through our borders that are not exactly perfect. They come out of prisons. 13,000 people convicted of murder. We don't need this in our country. We have enough difficulty. We don't need that. So I think people saw that. And it just seems that the conservatives are voting very powerfully. It should never happen. A thing like that should never happen. This election should be over. They spend all this money on machines. And frankly, if they'd use paper ballots, it would be over by 10 o'clock. And by the way, the paper ballots would cost 8%. It would be 8% of the cost. If they would use paper ballots, voter ID, proof of citizenship, and one-day voting, it would all be over by 10 o'clock in the evening. It's crazy. They use these very expensive computers, and I'm hearing in Pennsylvania they won't have an answer till 2 or 3 days from now. I think it's an absolute outrage if that's the case. Now, maybe it'll be later, but it's paper ballots in France. They went paper ballots because the mail-in was not working. It was corrupt. And in France, they went paper ballots. And at 10 o'clock in the evening, they had 37 million votes counted and done. They had a winner, they had a loser. And in this country, I mean, I'm just hearing that in certain states, it's going to be a long time, and it won't even be close. It won't even be that close. They say, I'm going to win the state, but it's going to take a long time to certify it.
I'm hopeful that Trump wins because I know that he provides results. You know, he doesn't just talk about this and that. He provides results, and that's why, you know, I'm supporting him.
The popular vote has to be Donald Trump because more people have common sense than not, and I feel that Trump is, dominated.
Well, I agree. I think I feel good about it. Just watching the polls and talking to people and looking at the signs and the rallies. I mean, it's hard to say that he's not going to win this thing. So, but anything can happen. I think the world is, it's important for not only the United States, but the world.
I think that Kamala Harris will be winning today. I have no doubt in my mind that Kamala Harris is about to be the next president of the United States, the first woman president. A woman is very much needed to run this country. And let me be very clear, okay? Donald Trump wanted us to go back to a place that we used to be. But as Kamala Harris says, we're not going back.
Having a black woman almost becoming the president of the United States is so important to me because I'm a black woman, double minority, and I feel like being able to see somebody in this position who looks like me is so important. She's going to represent me and my rights.
All right, joining me now from India Today's newsroom is our news director Rahul Kanwal, who I know since morning has been tracking all the latest, what's been buzzing across, specifically with the elections. Rahul, what is your assessment? What do you think it's looking like? It's a close call in some, while Trump is clearly leading in most of the red states. Go ahead.
At this time, the New York Times is predicting that there's an 84% chance that Donald Trump will once again be president of the United States. Only the second man in history to have a gap term and then come back again to be president. We'll try and make sense for our viewers on India Today about where Trump is getting these numbers from. So of the Electoral College in the United States, 242 votes currently in favor of Donald Trump, 108 in favor of Kamala Harris. But the big problem seems to come from that very crucial battleground state of Pennsylvania. If I take you through the live numbers for Pennsylvania, at this moment, Donald Trump is leading with 51% of the votes that have been counted. Kamala Harris has 48.1% of the votes that have been counted. If this trend continues, 57% of the votes have been counted so far. If this trend continues, it would be a massive setback for the Harris campaign, given the intensity of the ground game that the Democrats put all across Pennsylvania, the number of rallies that Kamala Harris did. Pennsylvania is crucial if Kamala Harris is to have any chance to win. Apart from Pennsylvania, if I take you through some of the other battleground states, in Michigan, where 24% of the votes have been counted so far, Kamala Harris with a very comfortable 51.5% of the votes counted versus 46.7% for Donald Trump. Relative lead here for Michigan. She needs to win Michigan. She also needs to win in Wisconsin. If I take you through the votes, just look at the gap there, 49.8 versus 48.7. That's how tight this election has been. So much has been said so far about exit polls, pre-polls. The fact is, this is a mighty tight election, which is why the results suggest. So what you've got across the rest, the Sun Belt states in the heartland of the United States, very solidly red. You've got some pockets of blue. If you're looking at this election with not much skin in the game except just to try and find out who's winning, at this moment, Pooja, it looks quite solidly that Donald Trump has by far the more advantageous position in the votes that have been counted so far. In 2020, Joe Biden had 303 Electoral College votes versus 235 for Donald Trump. If you compare with the 2020 elections, so far, Donald Trump has 226, 108 for Kamala Harris. But the advantage is he's been able to flip one. Pennsylvania, they're ahead, and he's been able to flip one. So this is the way it stands. 188 Electoral College votes still to be counted. So 50 currently being considered a toss-up. As of now, it seems Donald Trump is heading towards becoming the next president of the United States. Pooja.
Rahul, tell me this, and for the viewer possibly wondering, for the USA that we are tracking so closely, why do these elections matter globally with regard to relationship with India? Because whoever wins will also decide possibly how global opinions are also shaped up and the kind of uncertain times that we are living in right now.
Well, I had a very elaborate conversation with some of the key decision makers at the apex of India's national security architecture. And while at a more macro level, the Modi government seems to be not so worried about who comes to power, there are very important tactical differences in how the relationship will play out over the next 4 years. With Kamala Harris, there'll be broad strategic continuity. That's the sense that the key policymakers in the Modi government seem to have. Whereas with someone like a Donald Trump, the relationship is far more transactional, it's far more unpredictable. And while if he raises tariffs, which he's promised to do, it creates more tension between China and the United States, which in some ways is good for India. America improving its relationships with Vladimir Putin and Russia again is good for India because that takes Russia slightly away from China's grip, which again from an Indian geopolitical position is advantageous. But the fact is that Trump will push the Trump agenda very strongly. Currently, the balance of trade between India and the United States skews towards India, and therefore he's been calling India tariff king, so we can expect some pushback, and that will continue till the time the balance of trade gets restored to some kind of parity which suits Trump. So he's not going to be easy to deal with. The good side, though, is that he seems to like Prime Minister Modi. There's a certain awe he seems to reflect, the kind of crowds that came to Howdy Modi. Trump was clearly amazed by those. He sees Prime Minister Modi's popularity. So at the personal level, there is that bonhomie and chemistry which would be advantageous. But in just the kind of personality he is, there will be more landmines that will need to be navigated.
Rahul, I do have one more question. What do you think is possibly the reason that despite the kind of hype in the campaign we saw, Donald Trump is leading with such a margin in so many states? Do you think possibly America is still not ready for a woman president and a president of color? Or do you think it's because of the issues of Donald Trump?
If you look at the NBC poll which came out just before voting started, 74% of overall respondents said they didn't like the direction in which America was going. Looked at in an Indian context, that shows a very high level of anti-incumbency. 75% of your voters don't like the direction in which this is going. If this hadn't been Donald Trump, if this had potentially been some other Republican candidate, they may have had it easier because after 4 years of Joe Biden being in power, the level of anti-incumbency was very high. It's also because of all the mistakes that Donald Trump has made. A comedian coming on his stage, mocking Puerto Ricans, the entire Puerto Rican community, then getting massively agitated, and they're big players and present in high numbers in a key battleground state like Pennsylvania. And those kind of mistakes is what's made this election more compelling. Otherwise, it might have been easier for another Republican candidate. But the fact is that Donald Trump has, despite all his limitations, his limited ground game, remember Donald Trump being outspent by Kamala Harris by a factor of 3 almost. So the Democrats had a stronger ground game. They outspent him in terms of the money that is available. Donald Trump outsourced a lot of his campaign. Elon Musk has been helping him. Other PSEs have been helping him. So despite outsourcing a lot of his campaign, if this is where things stand, it just shows you a lot about how badly divided the United States is at this moment. Pooja.
Very interesting. I appreciate you joining us, Rahul, this morning, bringing us these numbers, perspective, and how and which way possibly the elections are going to go.